How are we doing, Liz?
All good, Conor. Thank you so much, and welcome to First View. Great to have you here. Great to have a familiar face.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All the nostalgia is coming back. So
Absolutely, yeah. We've been lucky enough to have been on the first derivative journey for many years, right from way back in what 2009. Is that correct for you?
2000, August 4th, 2009.
See,
Correct.
close, very good. So I suppose we'll go right back, Conor, right to the beginning, if that's okay. You were one of the OGs, let's be honest, that came through the graduate, the infamous first derivative grad program. Going right back then, any key and fond memories from then?
Just tremendous fun. I was very lucky that when I was finishing my master's, that a lecturer pulled me aside and told me about this little company called First Derivatives. And I just remember how she described it. It was like sitting at this front edge or the front line, the front row at this intersection between capital markets and technology, working with the top banks, hedge funds, regulators in the world's top locations. And I just really remember thinking this was all too good to be true. And so just classic FD style. I put my resume in on a Tuesday. I got a phone call on the Wednesday asking if I could get to Newry on the Thursday. And I said that, a bit short notice. They said, well, this is it. So you can either make it or you can't. I said, okay. I had to take out the map, if I'm honest, to look at the rocky road from, at the time I was in Limerick, I'm a Cork man, but the trip up to Newry, stayed with a pal in Omagh and got a phone call the next morning. So interviewed Thursday, offer Friday to start on the Monday. And it really set the tempo for my career. I'm a big believer that the number one determinant in your success is the rate of growth of the organization that you join. And even when I arrived up, I think I was struck by a couple of things. One was listening to people who'd already been on the journey, who had been promised had been delivered. They had spent time in New York or London or Tokyo, and I was a big travel person. And so I couldn't believe the war stories I was hearing firsthand. And then the second thing was really understanding very quickly that the product was top STEM graduates from all different disciplines who had this unbelievable mix of IQ, but EQ as well. And so everyone was like really sound. We got on famously, but everyone was also really smart and hardworking. And so that ability to attract, retain, and really invest in talent, something that really blew me away, really from that first interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was very different back then, Conor. As you said, it was all in person, none of this online. You get the phone call and, as you say, it's jump in the car, be there tomorrow, no excuses. And it was all about first impressions. And, you knew all about that. You turned up at the speed of light and obviously made a fantastic impression there and then. So it moved really, really fast. At any point, was that a bit overwhelming? Was it too fast, the pace?
No, I don't think so, Liz. I think I went up there in hindsight, it was mortifying. Like I remember borrowing one of my dad's suits, and my dad is taller and bigger than me. So I was like, in this misfitted suit for the interview. And I remember we were put into a group scenario, and I think we were told that there might be 15 people interviewing for 12 positions. And so one might say, okay, how do I make sure I'm in the 12? How do I make sure I'm not in the bottom three was my sort of attitude. And there was two people who in the group setting just kind of talked themselves out of the job. So I was keeping very quiet. I'm not a quiet person, as you know, Liz. And so I had to remind myself to be quiet. But I was in this overfitted suit, or this huge suit, and I also had corkscrew curls that were down to my shoulders at the time.
I remember them well.
I thought they were cool, I thought they were cool.
They were cool, retro.
But no, it was fantastic. And then when we joined on the Monday, I made some incredible friends who've been lifelong friends and joined me and my wife at our wedding, for example. But the camaraderie was incredible. But there's about 30 of us started on the same day for this high-tech company, but they only had about 25 laptops. And so if you weren't one of the first 25 into the office, you were sat with a pen and paper going through all of this, all of the theory and solving problems.
BC1 booklet.
BC1, exactly right. Basic concepts.
Yeah.
But I remember it so well because there was a lesson there. The early bird catches the worm. And so you didn't want to be the person who was working with a pen and paper every day of the week. So there was a bit of a race to get into the office each day. But it was fantastic memories, Liz.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, some of the people that you joined, still great friends with nowadays. And I think that's been a common theme with a lot of FD alumni. They stay together, they join together and they remain friends, regardless of whether they work together or not. There's something quite special about that.
Hugely so, Liz. And I remember how novel it was that at the time we were put into sort of company accommodation. And it was almost like this extension of college. Like you had these college roommates, but you now were getting some pocket money and you had to show up to work. And I remember those first days, like that transition from college experience where a long day might have happened, for an exam in terms of studying late, but having to do it every day. Remember that transition. That transition was tough, but FD made it so easy at every step. They were there to support you. They had mentors, plenty of social activity, realizing that success is as much about what you know as who you know and the relationships you build. And I often think back to the old adage that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. And so really, really instilling that early and often was a key lesson for me.
Absolutely. And Conor, you were really lucky, I suppose, to have that close access with Brian Conlon, our founder. He, I suppose, seen great potential in you from early days and give you a lot of responsibility very early in your career in FD. And I remember your first project here was a major one for First Derivative and setting FD on the journey of growth. Thinking back over those years, I'm sure there's plenty of standout moments from then.
Oh, just absolutely tremendous. Liz, I talk about, happiness is this difference between expectations and reality. And I joined this company thinking that if 10% of what they talk about is true, I'll be a very happy person. And it just over exceeded my expectations. I spent 5 weeks cultivating fantastic lifelong friendships in Newry as part of the class of 2009. And then was literally on a flight to London, got a phone call on a Thursday, pack your bags, you're headed to London this weekend, for initially what was supposed to be, I think, a 4-week engagement. Ended up living in London for nearly 2 years. And from there, it just didn't stop. Spent some time in Tokyo and then moved to New York for the first of 3 times. But what was really impactful for me was as I was delivering these systems to the likes of Citigroup and Goldman and Morgan Stanley and Nomura and Barclays, was that in my mid-20s, all of a sudden, I was able to walk into any boardroom and have the confidence to say, what you have is good, but let me tell you what great looks like. And best practice from Goldman in New York looks like this, best practice from Citigroup in London looks like that. And all of a sudden, I had this confidence that the company gave me the space to develop, where I was truly a world expert in my mid to late 20s. And that was something that I will be forever grateful for in terms of those opportunities. And then really the transition from individual contributor to management was something that Brian gave me very early. And I was lucky to have a bunch of great mentors in the company. So Victoria Shanks, who's still at the company today, was an incredible mentor, not just in terms of how you manage your own work, but how you manage a team and how you manage up as well. So she really provided great tennis coaching around things that resonate with leadership. And that really helped form my relationship with Brian, if I'm honest. So Victoria, thank you for your continued mentorship. Brian saw that I was a very passionate person, that I was hardworking. I may not have been the smartest person, but I had this mix of IQ and EQ, and I cared deeply about problem solving, about people, and about the company. And so he gave me that opportunity to transition from individual contributor to managing a small team in Newry, the Morgan Stanley Centre of Excellence. And it was a team of 7 people initially that I was managing, and it was and continues to be the toughest thing I ever did professionally. And so I assumed that managing 7 people would just be like managing myself, like 7 versions of myself, like 7 I don't know how you describe it. But I realized very, very quickly that each person has their own strengths and weaknesses and needs, fears, and managing people is tough. And so I was very fortunate. I did quite a good job at managing that team of 7. We grew and scaled the team quite well to about 70 people. And then with Victoria's help, we were running professional services, a group of 150 people. And just countless examples where, based on the amount of experience and expertise that I had, that people really put wind in my sails and gave me confidence to succeed in places where I wasn't ready to succeed. That's a constant theme of my entire career.
Yeah. And I think the story of FD, obviously, those who are familiar with FD, it has that startup mentality. It always did. You know, we were always punching above our weight. We were always landing the big deals we thought we never would. And that Morgan Stanley project that we touched on is a prime example of that. And it's still a successful team with us to this day. So I think it's great that you had such a great experience there. And it's a big part of your story, of your development and everything else. So I think that's, for me, is what makes First Room quite unique to this day, is that, you know, it's going for those projects that we thought we never was untouchable at one point, and proving people wrong along the way.
Big time list. Like, if you think of the number of careers that have been launched, and this combination of like character and competence, like the incredible product of people that is able to attract people with this high level of competence, a high level of character, with the aptitude in terms of competence. You combine that with experience, the world is your oyster. And I think the one thing that we've learned at First Derivative is that we can absolutely win on the world stage. And that's a confidence that has stayed with me, that took me a number of years to really understand. But they're pound for pound versus the top universities of the world, versus the top brands of the world. Customers keep coming back because we're hardworking, we're pragmatic, we bring a little bit of fun, or we try to bring a little bit of fun to our day job. Because people realize you spend more time with your colleagues than you do with your own family. So if it's not fun, why bother?
Yes, you're in the wrong job, indeed.
Yes.
But I suppose progressing on from that, Conor, so obviously you moved from FD into leadership roles within KX, you know, as your career journey progressed. So how did you find that transition, you know, and particularly your role in KX moved from customer services, customer success, to AI specifically. So do you want to talk us through that journey?
Yeah, I think I was 31 when Brian called and said, Conor, would you like to head out to, I need you to head out to New York. And I'd lived in New York twice already. And I was doing this work with Morgan Stanley that was going really well. And we had just kicked off this sort of nearshore managed service product offering that was going really well. So Brian said, hey, I need you to head out to New York. I said, no problem. Do you want me to go for just a week or for 2 weeks? And he said, maybe you should give Tree a call and see if she'll come up and meet me for dinner with Julie in Carlingford. It's going to be longer than 2 weeks. So I said, oh, Jesus, all right. So up we went anyway and had a chat. And I think maybe 2 weeks after that, I'd come out initially to the US with the vision to run the business, to run FD as the managing director for the Americas. And it was quite a formative time. We had just acquired KX as a business, which was a family-owned kind of 7-person business set up by Arthur Whitney and Jeanette Lustgarten. So it's really a family-type operated business. And we were looking at potentially acquiring additional businesses. So it was a really formative time in the transition from pure play services towards solutions and ultimately into a pure play software business that caused a fracture that required the businesses to really split. So it's a really interesting and formative time in the business. And so it was just a huge opportunity that I couldn't say no to. And I gave it absolutely welly. I'm so proud of my time because I left everything on the pitch and no stone was unturned in the pursuit of making the combined company a success. And we acquired maybe a dozen businesses in the next 4 or 5 years that were like an MBA on steroids for me in terms of learning about people, process, technology, the integration of companies, the value propositions. And so it was this huge transition. And then looking at KX, when Seamus came in after poor Brian passed away, looking to potentially split the businesses out, that was an important time, a difficult time. But the opportunity for KX really to transition from being a family-run business, which has its own incentives and its own desires about scale, to really being the foundational technology supporting every company in better and more confident decision making was massive. And so, yeah, it was a great journey. Absolutely no regrets. My proudest time really with the company was being the ambassador and wearing the jersey, getting to meet the Irish president, multiple Irish Taoiseachs or prime ministers, past US presidents, but really not for me, but doing so as the ambassador and representative of the team that we created. And we had a very special culture in the Americas that's still there today, which I'm very proud of.
And such a culture shift, Conor, as well. You know, that was the first, you were sort of planting the seed for First Derivatives at the time in North America. So it was a big job. It was a big job, big responsibility to take on. But it says a lot, obviously, in terms of Brian thought you were very capable.
I was very lucky when I came back. So I'd lived in London for 2 years, Tokyo just for a number of weeks, and then kind of almost 2 years in New York. And when I made the transition back to Newry to set up the Morgan Stanley Centre of Excellence, part of that appeal was family. Trainer was in Ireland. Here was a great opportunity to set up something special. Part of it was acknowledging and seeing that there was an opportunity to work more closely with Brian. And so he recognized that quite early in my return and invested a lot of time in me, which manifested itself in lots of fun, lots of like great time spending time with his family, but lots of great lessons as well. And so I kind of did 2 years of that, or 2.5 years of that. And he was kind of ready now that I understood his way of thinking, what was important to him, and to really be a change agent for him to help scale the business in the Americas. Yeah. And so it was tremendous.
Yeah, and I think that was an important sort of secret sauce of Brian's success of when he was opening new regions, you know, ensuring that it was connected back to base, you know, and how he liked things done was replicated at scale. Is that fair to say?
Oh, hugely so. And Brian was my first major boss. I had customer bosses, but in terms of how a business is run, he had an accounting background, and his mantra was, I am going to determine what resources are at your disposal. And he didn't like fiefdoms. Like, he very deliberately set up the company in a way that was an anti-pattern to your traditional sort of consulting firm. And so he wanted to remove as much bureaucracy, as much paper pushing as possible, so that ambassadors for the company could be out in front of actual customers, listening on the front line for actual problems, so that we could position ourselves around how the market was changing. And it wasn't until you experience later leaders that you really appreciate how much freedom and flexibility he gave you to everything ultimately is about solving interesting customer problems. And so that ability to identify the breadth of challenges you can solve, the depth of how much value you can create, and then how you can position yourself to deliver on it. I appreciate more so in hindsight than at the time, because if Brian wasn't happy with something, you'd get an all caps email. Yes. If he was really unhappy, the entire content of the email would be in the subject of the email. Yeah. And if he was especially unhappy, there would be words that were misspelled in the subject in all caps. But it was a great time, and he was a fantastic leader. And there's not a single day that goes by that I don't think of him and Julie and the family, as well as the lessons that I was fortunate enough to be exposed to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the opportunities he'd given so many people. So absolutely, Conor. So I suppose moving on, in terms of your career with KX, obviously that was a whole other part of your story, yes. Really. And since then, obviously you've moved again, and your biggest jump to date, obviously, is your new role, CEO of AI1, a massive jump. So tell me more. Where did this come from? Was this always on the cards for you?
Yeah, I think there was a special moment that happened in the AI space, and I've been following emerging technology throughout my career, really. But in 2014 and 15, this new thing called the cloud emerged, and the whole world was thinking about things I can do today that I couldn't do yesterday because of this thing where infrastructure, physical hardware becomes more of a utility. Swipe your credit card. You don't have to spend a lot of money to buy it or manage it. And the emergence of SaaS companies that proliferated as a result of cloud. And I took a look at the emerging space in machine learning in 2017, 2018, blockchain for a hot minute in 2017, 18, 19. And each of those technologies showed promise. And I thought always about the problems that I had solved in my prior career. And was there a new way to solve those problems as a result of this new technology? And each time it was a little bit interesting, but not a revolution, more of an evolution. And when OpenAI released ChatGPT, was November of 2022, for the first time, there was this chatbot experience that mimicked like a human response or human behavior. And when I learned about how that actually operated, what I figured out was for the first time, there was this mathematical representation of language. So the earlier transformer models could take one context, so veterinary science, and I could ask a question about the difference between a giraffe and a wolf. Are they related or not? And I'd get a response on one domain. And then all of a sudden, OpenAI, in a triumph of capitalism instead of innovation, took that same premise and spent $100 million training the internet, dumping the internet into a whole pile of GPUs. And what they got was a next word predictor that mimicked a human chatbot across different domains. And this mathematical representation of language emerged. And so I thought back through my career as an individual contributor, building and scaling systems around decision science. How could that be done differently? And my mind was blown at this concept. This was definitely revolution instead of evolution. And I spent a lot of time within KX trying to position ourselves to receive the fruits of the technology. And what I kept seeing was a growing and growing and growing market of problems that were somewhat related to KX, but different. And throughout my career, I thought a lot about what gave me joy, what gave me satisfaction personally. And it was the intersection of problem solving, technology, mathematics, statistics. And here was a brand new playground, this opportunity that just opened up on my front door to go and explore and refine those things that gave me such joy in a brand new space that was going to be applicable to all markets, all regions, all companies of any size. And it was just too good an opportunity to forego. And so I was very fortunate that through my time with First Derivatives, I was afforded the opportunity to become a thought leader. And that confidence that I talked about gave me the opportunity to be a thought leader. And I used that to speak at events, started off with panels. And I remember speaking on my first panel, and I was petrified. I was beetroot red. I barely got a word out. For the first 10 panels I did, I was just covered in sweat. It was so embarrassing. And then I remember I did my maybe panels 10 to 20, and all of a sudden I felt like I was contributing. And then panels 20 to 60, I felt like this is a great challenge. I know what I'm doing, and I can actually look at people in the room and position myself. And through that, was invited to speak as a keynote speaker at Databricks' annual conference on AI. NVIDIA asked me to be a keynote speaker alongside another famous FD alum, James Corcoran. So the two of us spoke at Dell's annual conference. And through that journey, people got to see that I could articulate these technology concepts in very simple terms, things I can do today that I couldn't do yesterday. And yeah, that combination of having a passion to solve problems in a new space, combined with the confidence that I've received through my career and my experience, afforded me this platform that I was approached effectively to set up this business. And yeah, no regrets, Liz. It's a mile a minute, and I love every second of it.
Big, as you said, courage. It just takes a lot of sort of confidence to take the leap. It's not a lot of people would be brave enough to do it, but it certainly so far has been a very worthwhile leap for you. And everything that I'm seeing on AI1 is so exciting, and it's certainly getting people's attention. That's for sure.
Thanks,
But
Liz.
tell me a bit more. So AI shoring, you talk about that quite a lot instead of
Yes.
offshoring. So explain that one to me.
When we talk about things I can do today that I couldn't do yesterday, we often think about uh, the cost of delivering software or technology is trending to zero. Now, it's never going to get to zero, but it's trending to zero. And the time to deliver software is trending to zero. So in a world, if you think of solving by extremes, in a world where now technology is ubiquitous and available to everybody, what statements that hold true today won't be true tomorrow. And so if your moat, if the way that you protect the value that you generate as a business is defined by the number of people years of development that you've delivered, then in a world where it takes no time to deliver new software and it doesn't cost much, all of a sudden you're not very competitive anymore. And so what we've realized is a couple of things have changed. One is that this technology can now not just interpret what needs to be done, but can actually take action, what people call agentic AI. Agentic comes from the word agency or autonomy, but you are effectively outsourcing a decision to the intersection of hardware, software, data, workflows, and people. And so what we're seeing is this journey that's rapidly changing, is that people are using technology to help make better decisions. Then, as they see the technology making good decisions over time, they're willing to give more agency to that technology. And so our contention is that business operations of the future won't be managed by teams of people in Guadalajara or Costa Rica or Pune, but will actually be managed by software that gives you what looks and feels like a people-based outcome, but uses software to deliver it. It's a new paradigm called services as software. So people don't want your picks and shovels. They don't want to buy your software. What they want is an outcome. And because the cost of technology is trending to zero, you can now give people that outcome, but use software to do it.
One of your strap lines actually with AI1 that I noticed is run like a one-person company. Is that correct? Love
Yes.
that. So, is that part of the reasoning that the sort of the trust element, that it's a people first approach, that it's not all automated? What was the logic between that strapline?
Yeah, I think it's when we work with customers today, what we find is that there are companies, our largest client is 220,000 customers. Our smallest client has 2 customers. But either way, if you're dealing with a 2-person company, you can make them look and feel and act with the scale of 2,000 people. And if you're dealing with a 220,000 person company, it's a more difficult conversation, but being very candid and frank about it, those businesses need to reshape. And this is not about supporting a CEO in firing a whole pile of staff, but in certain industries, like insurance, as a great example, there is an existential crisis. Insurance is perfect competition. Prices continue to go up. Customers are really struggling to pay. And so what they realize is that the first insurance company that can offer the same product or service for 50 cents on the dollar or 60 cents on the dollar will win the entire business. And so there's this space race in certain industries, certainly, to reduce the working capital required to deliver a product or service. And so when we talk about running as a one-person company, it's less about literally helping them work as a one-person company, but it's working with the focus, allowing a company to scale with the ambition of just a one-person company.
Love that, because AI, it's everywhere. It's impossible to avoid it right now. I suppose on that note, looking forward, Conor, 5 years from now, obviously we have no idea where we'll be in terms of technology and everything else. I suppose for you, where would you like AI1 to be, or where do you envisage, your role being in 5 years from now?
Yeah, I think this is great. Very, very good question. I think a lot about what's coming around the corner. I think looking anywhere beyond a 24-month time horizon is somewhat naive. I think there's 24 months that we've got some visibility on. I think we're already seeing that the word AI is becoming a bit of a dirty word, and agentic AI is becoming a bit of a dirty word because it's being so overused that it's lost all meaning. And so AI one may not be called AI one. It may be
A
called
rebrand
just
coming.
it could be, but people really don't care about the how. And when people are talking about AI, they descend into the how so quickly instead of the why or the what. And so I think you're going to see people talking less and less about AI and talking more and more about outcomes or things you can achieve as a result of frontier technology. And so I like to use the analogy, it's like the third industrial revolution where people talk about electricity. And nobody talks about their electricity powered phone or their electricity powered laptop. It's just new inventions that came, the phone and the laptop. And so people need to stop harping on about AI as much. We see the world of enterprise AI kind of split into three core buckets. Knowledge management, which we think is going to be solved ultimately by your operating system, if you're a Google house or a Microsoft house. We see workflow automation and analytics as the second large prize. And I think that becomes available, something that's been around for a long time in capital markets, but really reserved for the top echelon of player because it requires so much hardware, software, data, workflows, and people and specialist labor. I think that becomes more democratized. I hate that word, but it becomes more available to people. And the third area is what's called agentic software engineering. And that's the ability to actually build software using AI technology to better improve the accuracy and the timeliness of the software that's developed. And so those for me are the three sort of battlegrounds of AI. We're firmly in that middle one. And our contention is if no new innovation were to occur beyond today, and if every company were to catch up to what's available, the world would be a dramatically different place. And so, our sort of what we fight for is a better way for companies to absorb the fruits of this technology to accelerate and de-risk their own transformation.
Very exciting. And it'll be certainly one we'll be following along, and I look forward to seeing the growth of AI one going forward. Conor, look, we could talk all day, of course, but I suppose for me to finish up, Conor, looking back over your incredible career to date, is there a piece of advice maybe you can give to someone starting out their career right now who's listening? What's that top sort of nugget of information or tip that you would give them starting out?
Give me the first is the career compass. And so when I joined, I knew I had an idea of the sort of problems I enjoyed, but not every role felt like progress. And so what I realized quite quickly was, even if I'm doing something, the beauty of First Derivative is that you're not doing it forever. So you could work on a customer problem at UBS or Nomura, and it could be really terrible work. And not everything feels like progress, but you've got this career compass. Like that pain actually helps you because you understand, okay, this is not what I want to be when I grow up. Cross it off the list. And so embrace that pain, embrace that challenge. I remember one specific role I had with a Japanese bank that I detested. The people, there was no crack. I wasn't learning much. So I took the opportunity to learn some stuff on the side. Always take the opportunity to learn if you can. Think about that career compass. I'm a 40-year-old now who still doesn't know exactly what he's going to be when he grows up, and that's totally fine. So don't stress about that and just take opportunities as they come up. The second piece of advice is if you've spent 2 or 3 years with First Derivative and you've got the chance to work with 2 or 3 different customers or work in 2 or 3 different locations, you are a thought leader. And there's a bit of imposter syndrome where you're going to say, I'm so boring People have no interest in my insights. I'm in my 20s or early 30s. No one's going to listen to me. And you just need to put your head above the parapet. And you will get trolled. So I've had many people ping me directly or indirectly, and it can be tough. But if you want to make the most of your professional life, be a thought leader, embrace that confidence, embrace the fact that it's not going to go perfectly well all of the time. But that would be my piece of advice. If you have spent 2 or 3 years at First Derivative, you are a thought leader. And write content, put yourself out there. For the first 10 times you do it, you're going to be beetroot red, but I promise you it'll get easier.
So Conor, thanks again so much for your time today. It was absolutely fantastic to catch up. And as I say, we'll be following along your journey into the near future.
You're very kind, Liz. Listen, thanks so much for reaching out, for the opportunity to talk. And I really hope people learn a couple of things along the way that might benefit them. And so looking forward to seeing the next group of thought leaders emerge. And congrats on your successes.
Thanks, Conor. Bye.